All right. Well,
There
oh,
it is.
I was gonna say you're a ghost. I can
Yeah,
see right through you,
I
dear.
wish.
Oh, dude.
I wish.
Dude, thank you very much, first and foremost, for taking the time. So sick, man. I really appreciate you
Sure
hopping
thing.
on today and doing this, man.
Sure thing. Thanks for asking me.
Absolutely, and everybody always says this too, but it is very funny, when sometimes you say somebody is busy or they have some stuff going on, and it's like, oh, I've got the kids and I've got all of the stuff that you're involved with. And for years, my friends and I talking about, looking at the back of a record and like, what isn't this guy doing? Like, what are you not involved with one way or another? So, and it's so sick, and looking into,
Thanks.
kind of the inspiration and the draw as to, yourself having the idea of, an affordable approach for bands being able to put out stuff. Like, it's so awesome, man. It's absolutely awesome. So I appreciate you taking the time in a busy schedule for sure.
Sure thing. Thanks. I
So,
appreciate that.
so obviously, a lot of these things kind of start off early and kind of dive into more recents and different things too. But one of the things that I had heard you were mentioning before was early on, burning the tape of a copy of your parents' Beach Boys LP, and from there, having a copy and getting a copy of your own. Where did it come into as far as buying your own first CD or cassette tape or vinyl? And what was the local shop to you that you were getting this stuff at?
I mean, if I'm talking about first, I think my first CD was Weird Al.
Oh man, that's awesome.
It's pretty good. I'm trying to think. The first CD I think I bought with my own money might have been a Van Halen album, which I think I just
Oh man.
thought I might like. I never
Okay.
got that super into it, but I was like, I think this is my stuff. But
Okay.
I think
Okay.
it's debatable.
Now,
But
and I know you mentioned too, like hair metal and that being, kind of an earlier draw. Was that something from your
for
parents,
sure.
or was that something, where like you had buddies in school that were kind of drawn to that, or how did that come into you?
It was neither of those things. I think I just heard Guns N' Roses on the radio or Def Leppard, and it was just kind of clicked in some way that to my adolescent boy brain.
Yeah.
The other shit I had heard didn't before that. I had sort of been into I liked some surf stuff, Beach Boys, but also just Ventures, stuff like that, and you know I liked some of the oldies stuff my parents listened to, but somehow the hair metal stuff was kind of the first thing that seemed to I kind of identified with it in some different way. I don't know, maybe it was 2% more angry or something. I don't know,
Right. Had a little more
but I
crunch
was
to it. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Okay.
something seemed a little more dangerous.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I mean, and with the Beach Boys stuff, was that something where it was maybe a little bit more, available to sing along with, or obviously I think this was before you playing guitar or any sort of instruments, but was there something in the instrument that drew you?
Yeah.
Does anything like that come to mind as far as what initially was the draw to that?
I don't think so. I mean, that specific, whatever, Beach Boys dubbing, I think I was pretty young. I think I was 6 years old or something. So I think it was just kind of
Okay.
I like this and I
Yeah.
can make a cassette of it. I don't,
Yeah.
I never even got that into the Beach Boys, to be honest.
Okay.
I kind of, whatever, I respect them now and they
Mhm.
have their place for sure. But even then, I didn't I was probably just as likely to put on the Big Chill soundtrack that my parents had, or
Okay.
whatever. I think that was just yeah, it was just what happened to be the one I dubbed, I guess.
Okay.
But
And you've talked about a couple of different local record shops to you. Birmingham, I think there was a Next Door Records that you'd mentioned at one point. And then something
yeah,
local to you in Massachusetts. Was there anybody there that was introducing you to stuff, or maybe you dropped something on the counter and they're like, "Hey, man, if you like this, you should check this out." Did you have anybody that was kind of outside your comfort zone as far as that was an influence on your sound or interest in sound?
well, it's kind of interesting. So when I was listening to the Beach Boys and hair metal, I was living in Massachusetts, where I lived until I was I don't know, 10 or 11 or something like that. Then I briefly I lived in California for a couple of years in like a rural area. And that's where I kind of like found out about some punk from a friend of mine and got into like the Dead Kennedys and Bad Religion and sort of, and then I was into the Ramones. And so, but they were kind of just like, they kind of felt like any other band to me. Like I liked them, maybe I liked them a little more, but I wasn't like, oh, this is like a scene or like I didn't really like understand. I just had a couple albums I thought were cool. And then I moved to Birmingham and met a friend there who was into punk and like into those bands, but also like sort of knew about what was going on then, which we're talking about like early 90s, like he was reading Maximum Rock and Roll, which I'd never heard of, and, stuff like that. So I was just kind of like, oh, there's like this whole world that I was unaware of. And then there was this Next Door Records in Birmingham that was literally kind of like a hole in the wall. It was probably like 8 feet by 12 feet. It was like the entranceway to another business, literally. And it was only open, like the kid who owned it, ran it, was in high school, and he would just open it up after school. Sometimes he was there on the weekend. Like it was like a very strange, like think in hindsight, it was a very strange, weird, like kind of unique thing. And they didn't even have that many records, but my buddy, Matt, who's the one who had introduced me to like sort of what was going on, then we would go there to Next Door Records like after school or something ourselves, and we would sometimes just be the only people in there, just us and like the dude working. We would just hang out. He'd be playing records. We'd be like, this is cool, like what is this like? And he'd just like put it on. So like it wasn't uncommon for us to just like kind of hang out in there for like an hour or so, and then like
dang. That's awesome.
buy something. So it was almost like going to a friend's house who had a distro. Like it was pretty unique in that it kind of like opened my eyes to what was going on, but also just kind of let me explore things and like whatever. The dude who owned it and the one other person who worked there were just like very chill. Like they had no pretensions, whatever. We were just like high school kids, like whatever, who cares? Like, we weren't cool, but it was fine. It was like, oh, I'll put this on, like whatever. So
no, that's awesome.
I think that helped open the doors a lot. Or, like, and then my friend would buy one record, I'd buy another, and we'd like check them out, or like we'd like dub them for each other or whatever, so just kind of continually opening our eyes.
Yeah. I think that helps too, being like kind of in there and hanging out, and then, maybe even the record, store owner, pops open a couple of these and they're listening, and then all of a sudden you just leave. It's like, okay, cool, see ya. Like it probably helped a little bit that you guys were buying stuff too.
Sure. But yeah, it wasn't, I mean, I don't even really know how it stayed. It always stayed open for a couple of years. Then he moved to college, and it was a pretty fleeting thing. I don't even know if it made much money or whatever. Sometimes there was other people in there, but not. There wasn't like a ton of business.
Okay.
And it was only punk. It was like 2 bins of 7 inches, 2 bins of LPs, only like current punk stuff.
Oh dang. Okay.
So that's it was awesome. Like, no one who didn't, like it was pretty limited who would be interested in that.
Okay.
Especially in Birmingham, Alabama in the early 90s. There wasn't like a ton of people breaking down the doors to get like whatever the newest Good Grief 7-inch, but I was there to buy it.
Awesome. That rules. I mean, whether in those times or maybe even at another point earlier on, digging through some bins, does anything come to mind even drawing you like cover art or logos, or possibly being in a record shop and seeing a logo or a flyer that introduced you to a band that you maybe even still love today? Is there anything that comes to mind? I know hair metal is kind of funny for like logos where you don't know anything about it and you go and you get drawn into. Or Death was another band I had no idea what it was and saw that. I'm like, whoa, this is sick. Yeah,
I think that definitely happened. I feel like the Filth Blatt split. I was like, it was like, what is this? like this seems like something that I should be like checking out. I feel like the first time I saw like the first like Hell Nation LP, like which isn't like a particularly good cover, but it's like really stark and like it was just kind of like what is like and like that was at a different record store, but I remember listening to it there and being like, I don't know if I like this, but like feel it, but like buying it because it was kind of like I had to find out, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, I don't know. I can't think of too much else like cover art wise that like uh, jumped out at me. Yeah, a lot of it was just curiosity and just being able to listen to it at the store or whatever, and then like mail ordering stuff from like Maximum Ads and stuff like that. Like taking chances on shit.
Yeah. Yeah. A
Which
little
is
bit
a
later,
totally different
did you
different
take
world.
part in the CDs where it was like a penny to buy? I mean, this was some years later, but and then you get a bunch of CDs out of the catalog. Did you ever take part in anything like that?
Like Columbia House and shit. You mean? Is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
I did that before. That was like when I was into like hair metal and stuff.
Oh,
I would
okay, okay. I didn't
I was
realize they
getting some of
did that
that
much.
like oh yeah, long time. I did
That's awesome.
it. I did it a couple times, and I don't know. I feel like I mainly ended up with weird shit that I didn't like because it was like it seems like a good idea, and then you get like like 10 of the 12 CDs you get are like shit that you're like I don't really know if I like Oingo Boingo or like whatever the fuck. It seemed like the closest thing that you could get to what you was of your interest. I don't know.
Oh God, that's awesome. I love it. So I know you mentioned, in another interview, as far as another buddy of yours that kind of was a drawing inspiration for you picking up an instrument and just kind of dinking around with writing some stuff. But was guitar, that was the first instrument that you ended up picking up?
I think before guitar, when I was really young, I had piano lessons. I definitely had
Oh, okay.
like some early piano lessons and early guitar lessons, neither of which stuck particularly well. I think piano was first, but I was like okay at it, but had like no interest. And guitar lessons were kind of the same way. Like I would do the thing where I would like go to the lesson or like, and but then like not really practice and not really like get any better. So like guitar was more of interest to me, but I didn't like it didn't really stick.
Okay.
And then I can't remember what age that was, but that was I mean pretty young. And then I guess when I was like 12 or 13 or 14, I tried again with guitar and like wasn't really I don't know. I didn't really like I think I just felt like I was bad or like there was no there wasn't much impetus to keep going, I guess.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
my friend Matt, who's the one who would like introduce me in Birmingham to like what was going on, like that there was like a current like active like punk scene, was kind of just like in sort of like the tradition of punk was just like we should start a band, like he had drums. I was like I
Okay.
have a guitar, but I like can't play. He was like that's fine. So I was just like literally like making up chords and like playing like I mean like horrendous music.
Do you remember any of the song titles from this band or what this band was
Ooh,
called? Like what were you guys digging into? What was the
uh,
inspiration for being this young plan?
the band name was MD, and I can't remember any song titles. I don't even know if we must have had song titles. I guess your LP fell over.
Fell over,
Uh,
yeah.
but I don't know if we must have had titles, but I don't even know. I'm sure they were terrible,
Okay. What was
but
that
yeah,
first guitar that you got? Was it something that was around the house, or was it something that you had to save up a couple of dollars for to get? How did that end up coming to you? And what kind was it?
uh, it was like one of the cheap like Kramer or like whatever, like kind of like shredder looking, like bottom of the barrel
Okay.
guitars with like a whammy bar.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think my parents like wanted me to take music lessons or something, and I was kind of like I'm like the piano like wasn't like clicking or whatever, so I was like like guitar was like an idea. like, so it was like,
Okay.
whatever.
Something
I'm
to
not sure.
try and keep sticking to. Now, how did drums
Yeah.
get into? Like, where did that come into as far as you playing? Was that just kind of a thing where you needed a drummer and then you hopped into that?
I don't really play drums. I play drums on a couple of recordings, I guess, but
Yeah.
like it's always just kind of like a idea for a project, or like this seems fun, or like there are definitely I've got a lot of drumming limitations. So it's like for me to play drums on something, it's got to fit within like a very narrow like span of, I don't know,
Okay.
requirements, I guess. But
Okay. All right.
I
Nice.
think drums are fun. I like drums. I have like drum ideas, which is
Okay.
probably dangerous. But yeah, I'm not like I played drums for. We did one band that I was playing drums in and played a few shows, but like which was cool. But yeah, I wouldn't like if someone was looking for a drummer, I wouldn't like really suggest myself.
Okay. All right. I mean, and it's fun too, and it's one of those things, where I think it's always interesting that someone, is in a band and can do all of the different things. I mean, like myself, I'm primarily a drummer, and it's even funny, you mentioned kind of limitations to where like 20 years later, there's still plenty of things where I'm like, God, why am I not better? But with
Yeah,
with guitar and kind of transitioning over, it's like trying to pick up that. It's like this does not make sense to me. We're talking like amps or pedals or different things. I'm like, yeah, all right, it sounds awesome. I mean, that's a good start, I think.
yeah.
What did the one thing I've always noticed kind of with your playing too is the down picking. Where
Oh,
were
yeah.
early inspirations to you as far as when you were picking it up and everything started kind of clicking and you're getting a little bit more serious with it? Where is your inspiration drawn as far as your playing and your style? Beating the hell out of the thing.
Well, I mean, I think the down picking thing came. It certainly wasn't like an always, like that came later. I think
Mm-hmm.
it just came from realizing that it sounded better or more aggressive. I think it also just helps keep you on time.
Hmm.
But it's kind of like I don't know. I think it became really a thing for failures, like when we're like we were kind of trying to like make it be. It was kind of like I think we were trying to think about tempo and aggression and like kind of like minor threat speed and like this kind of like snap of those songs, and it was kind of like sort of like maximum down picking speed is right around that kind of like threshold of like kind
Mm-hmm.
of like it's like kind of naturally urgent because it's like you're like doing something like as fast as you can. So it's like, how can it not be like a little frantic or like, how can there not be like energy there? Whereas like, going like this motion is way different than going like, 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 that comes across as the same tempo, like when the strumming, but it's like a way more intense act.
Yeah.
And you definitely like you can hear it as a listener, and I don't know, I think it sort of informs things. And for failures, it kind of became like a writing, like a concept of like a like sometimes it's helpful to have like not like rules, because there are some songs where we broke it on, but but it's like okay, like how can this riff be cool and be all down pick, but not be monotonous, but be like, like, and try and like sort of like work within all those frameworks. Because some things it's easier to cheat and do with like when you're strumming up and down and whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but yeah, but I mean, down picking is best. If I
Yeah.
had a
Okay.
choice, it'd always be down picking.
And I mean,
But
over the years, like especially paying a little bit more attention to guitar and listening, it's like like you say, it adds that extra almost viciousness to it. Like, God, I'm tired for this guy playing. I don't know if he's but like has just built it up over the years and he's fine, but I'm like,
yeah,
boy,
yeah,
it sounds tiring to me. Yeah.
yeah,
What as
yeah.
far as your first time, playing a show, what did everything go good? Was it something that was exciting? Were you nervous? What went into you playing in front of people for the first time?
No, my first show was definitely horrible.
Oh
Just because we were like 15, we were like,
no.
like my dad was at the show. It was like at this weird club space in Birmingham that I can't really even describe, but it was kind of just like the most like run down club and like yeah, like it was kind of like large, but like I don't know. There weren't that many people there, and most of them were there for like the cooler, like much older and like kind of more. I don't even know. Yeah, we were like 15-year-old straight edge kids playing to like a room of like Birmingham's like seedy kind of like uh, grungy punky scene that like we were just
Okay.
like like some dummies. But I mean, it was fine, other than the fact that I don't think we were like a good band, and like, but we
Okay.
played like I don't know. I think we only played like 4 or 5 songs or something like that,
Okay.
including a Screeching Weasel cover. So you know, it was it was
Awesome.
fine. It was fine.
Okay.
But yeah,
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I think keeping in mind from those early shows and those early times is recently I was at a show and there was a band. It was a lot of real young kids, still high school kids, and it was their first show, and the room was filled. There was tons of. I mean, it was a smaller space, but it was
yeah,
packed. And
yeah,
it was just kind of one of those things where it was like, I don't want to deter you. I don't want to cut down on this moment for you, but just keep in mind not to get used to this.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
because like it kind of gives you this feeling of like being on top of the world and like, oh man, like all these guys love me, and then it's just kind of one of those things like I don't want to cut this for you or kill it, but just keep
yeah,
it in mind it's not always going to be like this.
yeah.
So
It's like one of those first show things that happens where it's like everyone like turns up for like their friends like bands like first show or
yeah,
whatever, and then
yeah.
it's like a year later, the 20th show, it's like everyone's like,
What
I've seen
happened?
them, whatever. Like, I'll maybe see them like next week or whatever.
Right. God. So even from these earlier times through today, what goes through, when you're going to play a show, you're going to do something live, your pre-show ritual, do you have, or maybe not even a ritual per se, but something that just kind of centers yourself or gets you ready for getting out, and, is playing still something that kind of, gets some nerves going, or are you, a lot more excited and comfortable with it from years of doing it?
Uh, I mean, I haven't played a show in a bit at this point, but yeah, it's definitely something that I can still get nervous before a show for sure.
Mm.
Not even like I don't even. It's not even necessarily like messing up or like whatever. Like I don't know. Um, I think it just depends. But normally, I also find that usually the shows that I'm like more like nervous about or something often end up going better. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
I keep that in the back of my mind if I'm like feeling like I'm not like whatever, like my head's like not in it or something. I'm like
Yeah.
it'll be fine, like whatever. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I like that too because I think that's one of those things where there's been lots of times where it's like, man, we've practiced a whole bunch and I'm so ready. There's a bunch of people here, and then it's like all my cymbals break or my toms fall over or
yeah,
all my sticks are breaking. It's like, boy, that I needed to take it down a notch on this one.
yeah. First
But
shows are probably the most nerve wracking for me, but luckily those don't happen very often.
yeah,
Or
okay,
like
okay,
starting off like a set with like a new song, or like starting off something like from like a point of like uncertainty is like a something I've learned is not a good
yeah.
idea.
Right. Good tip. That's absolutely great
build,
tip.
build a build a comfort zone
Yeah.
and then explore the space from there. Yeah,
I love that. That's certainly a good thing. Even if you have if you have something where you have a couple of songs to kind of get into and feel the motion, feel the room out, and then it's like, okay, this one's brand new. All right, we'll see how this goes. From here. But
yeah,
so
yeah.
where in, like, as far as like through years of playing in different bands and different just approaches with things, where does recording come into as far as like that first band that you end up, having somebody sit down and you're recording?
Well, I think it probably, I mean, it's a slow progression, but like in high school, I remember that crummy band that my friend Matt and I were in. We borrowed a four track. He knew someone with a four track. I don't even know who it was. We borrowed it from them and like recorded ourselves and did that a couple times. And then eventually I got a four track when I was in high school and was using that to fuck around with and like did a couple projects and like recorded. And then another band I was in when I was in Birmingham, we drove like an hour to record with a guy who had maybe it was a cassette 6-track, but and that which actually turned out better than I was able to be doing on a 4-track, but but not that much better. But so there was those experiences, and then I went to college, and there was a small like 8-track studio there, and so you had to take like a specific like recording class to be able to like, which wasn't really anything more than just like this is how this room works kind of thing. Like it wasn't like taught by like a recording engineer, it was so I took that class and was able to use that room to basically like sign up and use it, and helped a couple bands record demos there on the 8-track, and then like a couple local bands, Anton Boardman and Last 40 Seconds. I recorded Strome's Dream there a couple times, Orchid demo, and then it's like from there I'm trying to think. There was 2 8-tracks there. One was digital, one was analog, but the digital one was an ADAT machine, which it's old technology at this point. But anyways, you could sync 2 units together. So I got the smart idea to like put my money into getting another one of these machines so that I could record 16 tracks, which would allow like way more options for like drum miking and stuff like that. So I did that.
Okay.
I did that for a couple things there. But yeah, it was all just kind of like, I don't know, I guess it was just something I was interested in, and also just like if I knew someone, like if there was a local band in this area that like, I was like, oh, like if you want to record a demo, I have like access to this like studio, like we could use it,
Okay. And so this was through the college, you're saying that you've had, you
Yeah.
had like, okay. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, was that over like the amount of like 2 years or so that you were there and had access to that?
Yeah. That sounds about right. Because I think the first year I was there, I didn't actually record anyone there, but yeah, I was probably starting like my second year of college and whatnot. And also some of it, like I think some of the Last 40 Seconds LP we recorded, I believe, because there was classrooms that you could use at night to practice in, that were like not just like random classrooms. And I think some guitar, like I would take my machine and we would record like guitar in like a classroom at night, like that kind of thing, or maybe vocals in like the classroom. So yeah, that was all done at the college. And I think from there, I was just kind of like, music was like the main thing that interested me. But I was like, I knew that like playing music, like the music I wanted to play was never going to be like a job. And, like I was running a label, but that was probably never going to make any money. So, I was like, none of these are like
tough,
ways to like pay the bills or anything. So I was kind of like, but people seem to be able to pay rent by recording. And it was interesting to me. So I was kind of like, I'll try and set up a studio and just like keep recording bands and kind of see what happens.
Okay. Yeah. What?
So yeah, that was like, I got out, I graduated college, and then like moved into a house with some friends and started building like a little space in like the garage there, basically. And that was like that was like the first dead air that lasted for like 8 years at that house.
Okay. And
So
now within this new shop and kind of moving into like your own space, what were initial tools that you were wanting to have, that may have been the same exact or something that you felt like you would kind of messed around with other models that you really wanted to have for your own setup?
good question. I don't know. I mean, the space was pretty limited, and like my gear was pretty bare bones too, especially starting up. So it was kind of just wanting to have a space that was like it was more important to me just to have a functional space that could be affordable, both in terms of like I didn't have like some overhead that I was trying to like meet, and that like whatever some big band could just come record their demo or whatever, and it like wouldn't cost them like $1 million or something. But gear wise, like yeah, I mean I was just trying to get like the basics, honestly. Like at that point it was just kind of like I mean I was on forums and things seemed like cool and like of interest, but like I also like at that point I had recorded a couple of places with Orchid. I'd recorded with Kurt at like an older incarnation of God City,
Mm.
and with Steve Austin. But it's like my experience of even like what a studio like space was like, or like what gear was cool, was all just like mainly based on like early message boards, or like
Okay.
reading tape op, or like just looking through like Musician's Friend or some shit. Like I wasn't like I guess I also interned at a studio that was nicer, but like they they were clearly going for something that I wasn't. So like most of what they had like seemed like kind of unobtainable, or like you know I don't know. Yeah, I guess I was just mainly looking to be functional
Well, even in
and
those
be able
times,
to get it done.
even in those times of you like recording initially, did you have like anything as far as like were you looking into like how the recording process was going, or was that a little bit like further into playing, as far as like did you have years of watching people and kind of taking in knowledge and asking questions, or was that something where it kind of came a little bit later on?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so the interning thing that I did like was pretty much just watching bands record. So I definitely got like a little bit of a taste of like how like it was done at like a higher like professional level kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, but it was mainly I was mainly there for like initial like drum tracks and like a bass overdub and stuff. But like it wasn't like I didn't watch every process. Like I never saw them mix a record. I don't think I was even never there for. Maybe I was there for some scratch vocals, but like it wasn't that much experience, and it wasn't that like wide ranging. Like so, yeah. I guess most of what I was learning or like was just from like reading the tape op message board, and like just like trying shit, or like having some dumb idea, but like you know it seems like we're not that far in the future, but like the whole world of YouTube, like wealth of information and stuff,
Yeah. Right.
it wasn't
Wasn't there?
available, and it was just kind of like
Yeah.
just kind of like fucking around in the dark, like just trying shit, and like you know probably trying the same dumb shit over and over again that probably could have been improved upon, honestly, but um, so I don't know.
did you have anything from the message boards that like someone's like, man, you have to get this drum mic, this thing's the best thing that you're ever going to get, and then you get it, you spend all that money, and then it sucks? Anything
uh,
pop up where you're like, no, what did I do, this is awful, who recommended this?
I don't know about awful, but there's definitely some things that like back in that time, like I can think of like a specific like condenser mic that was kind of like buzzed about, like, oh, this is like great for the price or something, and I got like a couple of those, and like
Oh no.
a mic pre that was like all the rage in like the early 2000s, and both I think are just like fine or like acceptable. Like there's
Oh
nothing,
no.
they're not like terrible, but like there's just kind of like, I mean, maybe those condenser mics were actually bad, but it's just kind of like I don't know. but there was no real. I had no other way to like try things. But I mean, I was mainly like buying like very like budget shit. So
Yeah. Okay. So,
you know,
so after the initial time, that you've kind of gotten, a few recordings down, or you've, started getting a little bit more of a rapport and clientele, however you want to say. Um,
sure.
do you have in mind like a specific piece that you wanted for your studio that was something that was like, man, okay, if I could save up this, I really want to have this in my spot. I want to, maybe it's an upgrade, or maybe it was something that you hadn't had that you really wanted to, toss in your spot.
I'm trying to think. Probably. I mean, when I first started out, I had like this really tiny mixing board that was like like a foot wide or something. So
Mm.
like for a few years, I upgraded the board at that first spot twice. So like the first time I did it, it definitely felt like a huge kind of like leap forward. And then the second time was kind of like, oh, I feel like a real like person, like I felt like
Okay.
the first time is like people would show up and it was just kind of like this like dinky, like mixing board. Is like, can you even like do anything with that? Or, and same with like expanding tracks. Like originally, I think when I first started off, I got a second machine of those like 8 tracks, so I could do 16 on my own. And then I eventually got like a digital 24 track, which was like way nicer because those old like they were digital tape machines and they were like kind of the worst of both worlds, where it was like you were a digital recording, but you still had to like rewind and fast forward tape. You had to wait for the machines to like sync up, and like
Oh no.
it was kind of like this
God.
nightmare where they had this error light that was just like a little. There was like a LCD screen that had like the time and whatever, and it was just a little asterisk that would light up to show that there was like some sort of error. And like if you read the manual, it was basically like when this lights up, there's some sort of like data that it's not reading, and it's like somehow like mathematically like calculating whatever's missing. And there would be sessions where it's just like lighting up. And like to be honest, I never heard anything, but it just kind of makes you feel like like fuck, is this like like is this all just about to like come crashing to a stop because you're just watching this light like flashing? It's
Oh
just like
no.
but those tapes,
Uh,
they were so bad that they were super VHS tapes that you had to
oh yeah.
format for this recording format, and there was like all these things you had to do. Like the tapes would get like a lot of tapes can get stretched out a little bit or like whatever. So before the session, you would have to put a new tape in, fast forward it all the way through, rewind it all the way through. Then there was like just like with VHS or like regular audio cassettes, there was like cleaning cassettes. So I would like get the
Oh
cleaning
yeah.
cassette out, put like the fluid on it, put it in for like 15 minutes. Like there was like all these like things to do to like try and hope that I wouldn't see this like asterisk flashing and all this shit. Um, but yeah,
Oh man.
so like once I got the digital machine after that, which had its ups and downs, but it was just like it just worked. It was 24 tracks. There was like none of this bullshit. It was just kind of like, oh my god, like,
I've come
uh,
into a new age.
seriously, it was like my life has changed.
Man, when you mentioned
It was
the asterisk kind of flashing, it just made me think of like for whatever reason like a band that came in recording, trying to sound like Weezer, and it ends up saving like the Dillinger Escape Plan or something. Like I don't know why that came into mind, but I was just like, oh man, I hope this does not turn out not like how it's not supposed to.
yeah,
uh,
it was just it
God,
was one of
that's
those
great.
things too where it was like the band, whatever, a band's just recording, they're working on they're focusing on their shit, but it's just like only I am aware of the
Right.
asterisks. And sometimes like if it got really bad, there might be, I forget what would happen, but maybe it would give like an error or something, and I would have to clean it. But I don't even remember that happening that much, but it was just kind of like this source of anxiety of like looking over and seeing, like you're just kind of like feeling like you're just like riding on the edge,
It's gonna crash
Oh
everything.
God. Yeah.
All right,
I feel like tense talking about it.
is this something that you still have around?
Uh, Hell no. No, I sold those. In some
Awesome.
ways, it would make sense because I still have some old tapes, like of my own projects from that. And
Okay.
occasionally people from other bands, even stuff I didn't record, are like, oh, I have these tapes. Can you transfer them? And part of me is like, sometimes I think, like, maybe I should get one of those. And I'm like, fuck that thing.
Oh my God. I mean, kind of touching on that, and this is funny that, we kind of, got into that. Uh, are there certain things that come to mind, along with that are just staples that you have to have in your in your setup, and then other things that, you had to kind of get away from that, that being that. And maybe to make it more simple, as far as like guitars, are there certain, obviously there's certain guitars, but what is something that you have, in your setup that you always keep on hand that you love?
Uh, I don't. I'm not sure I even know. I try and
Okay.
I like my setup's pretty minimal even these days. I've kind of pared it down to like essentials. But I mean, honestly, if there's something that would be hard for me to do without now, it'd probably be Pro Tools, which is probably a
Yeah.
very lame answer, but it's kind of like if it weren't for Pro Tools, like my whole like way of life would be challenged, you know. Um, but yeah, because I like to think. I mean, I also get like I work on so many mixes that are recorded by different people, different mics. Like I don't even. Sometimes people tell me what mics they used. Sometimes they don't. It doesn't really necessarily matter in the end because I've just got to work on it regardless.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so it's not like I have to. I guess what I mean is I've become pretty accustomed to kind of working with whatever I've got. And then a lot of my tools and tricks are just within the Pro Tools world. But yeah, because I mean, so even when I was working on the digital machine, um, the digital 24 track, I had an analog board, and all my mixes were coming back. They were leaving the digital machine, coming to the analog board, and being mixed there and through rack equipment. So it was kind of like anything I was working on. Uh, like it had to be decided then and there. Like there wasn't the revision process was very challenging, if even possible. It was kind of like you had to really commit to things, and it also meant that like I did some mixes for people then of stuff I didn't record, and it was like I basically had to be like, okay, I've got this week or 5 days where no one's coming into the studio. I'm not doing anything else, and I can kind of just leave the mix set up, email it to them, hear back like, oh, like we want like this change or whatever. I make the change on the board, email it to them again, and then like, then I'd have to be like, all right, like I've got a band coming in 2 days, so like anything, because then like literally everything's just gonna be wiped, and even if I tried to like make extensive notes and stuff, it was pretty, for me in that scenario at least, it was pretty hard to like get like an actual like recall of a mix on the board that like sounded the same,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like once I moved to working, like I was pretty hesitant because like that whole time I was recording up until like 2015 or so, I didn't have like a computer in the studio, a computer monitor, which for most people is
Damn,
kind of
really?
shocking because yeah, the 24 track had like a little LCD screen and you could see it had track meters, but that was it, and then just the analog board. So most people, were like really shocked that we're kind of like, how are you even doing
Yeah.
this? Like, what is this?
Wow. That's
Like
insane.
what is this? And I kind of there are some things I miss about it just because I kind of feel like looking. It's certainly informative to like look at Pro Tools or whatever program and see the audio waveforms, and yeah, you can see like that's off time. I can see it, or like.
Hmm.
But I feel like it does sort of change your listening to be able to visualize things or see something coming up, or like you can see a fade, or like it affects how you hear things. So
Wow. That's
I don't
insane.
know. I feel like part of me misses that kind of like no visual world, but
Hmm.
once I was in Pro Tools, like like right now, there's probably like 8 things that are in some stage of being mixed that I'm working on, and like a handful of masters that are being worked on, and it's like very easy for me to just like, oh, you want the vocals up? Like open up the session, turn up the vocals, bounce the mix, move on to the start a new mix.
Hmm.
There's no way that without the digital world that I'm working in now that like that would even be possible before. So it's kind of like, yeah, like literally the whole way that I work now would just be like impossible without Pro Tools. So I feel like
Jeez. That's
I've
insane.
got to give it the the highest praise
Yeah. Wow. I mean, do you
versus
have?
like an SM57 or like a
Yeah.
condenser mic, like whatever. I'll use a different dynamic mic. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like whatever.
Do you have conversations with maybe some newer people that are just starting to record, or do kind of get into having a studio and they're complaining about something, like Pro Tools, and it's like, whoa, man, you don't know anything about this asterisk, okay? Let me tell you, you want to complain about this? You have not seen a bad day.
uh,
like being an
no,
old head in a sense,
yeah, no.
I know the struggles,
I
man.
don't. I don't think I've ever told them about my walk uphill to school or anything like that.
Yeah.
But uh,
Uh,
but yeah. I
that
mean,
was
whatever.
funny.
There's
God.
annoyances within the digital world, etc.
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah. Totally. I can appreciate that.
nothing's perfect, obviously.
Yeah. Now, as far as like with you breaking down all this and kind of talking about like having to do different mixes and then somebody coming in like with as much that your name is on and as much that you are out doing and putting out, what is a stressful day to you? What is something where it's like, okay, maybe I have taken on too much? Do you have multiple bands coming in to record mixes? Like what has been something recently that you're like, man, I got to take it back maybe a little bit.
Normally, it's like my like email inbox is like really like bumping,
Okay.
and and like I've got several, whether it's mixes or masters that like I'm trying to get to that day, and it's kind of like because the inbox being bumping is usually a sign of like like revisions and stuff like that, which is fine and all part of the process, but they take up time without like sort of, despite what I was just saying, they are fast, but like if I've got say 4 20-minute mixes that need like to be revised, I probably dumbly, but I print everything in real time, which a lot of people don't do, but I put more faith in it. And so like
Hmm.
if there's a 20-minute mix that someone needs the vocals up on, whatever, I'll make whatever adjustments I need to, and then I'll let the mix bounce for 20 minutes. And if I've got 4 of those, then that's like, we can round it to like an hour and a half, or like 2 hours of like, whatever. Pro Tools working. Basically, I can't work on anything else.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
can't start a new thing while it's doing all this. So it's kind of like, like I'm trying to like knock those out, but I'm also aware of this like new stuff that I'm like trying to work on that I'm not getting to. So that kind of
Okay.
like stresses me out. But yeah, normally it's not like it's fine, but like it's usually like the worst is like whatever, like after I have like a day off or like 2 days off, like I come back and it's like, oh, there's like all this shit that I'm like trying to get to today, and it's like, like that definitely stresses me out.
Yeah. My next question is: do you have days off? So this actually exists. You take time to yourself.
It's kind of barely, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet.
Uh, my work ethic is kind of fucked up. So I usually try and take one day off a week, and if I'm being honest, I'm usually sending some work emails and stuff on that day.
Yeah.
So
So still
it's
not.
it's yeah, but it's hard. It's difficult being like a one person show. Like on one hand, whatever. I'm grateful for like being able to do this and like that people want to work with me, etc. So like that's cool, and I'm like happy to be doing the work for sure. But it's like, but yeah, when I'm not doing emails or revisions for a day, like there's no one at the gig filling in for me. Like
Yeah.
I just show up the
Jeez.
next day to more work. So
Okay.
I honestly kind of feel like like the idea of taking like multiple days off and stuff like actually like makes like gives me some anxiety and stuff because I'm like all this shit's gonna like build
Pile
up and
up.
like
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like normally if I wanted to do something like that, I have to like I have to bust ass like for a few days beforehand to like I try to get like really ahead of stuff, and then like bust ass like after like when I'm back in the studio to try and like make up. So it's kind of I've kind of worked
Okay.
myself into like a an unforgiving situation, but you
Dear
know,
God.
but
So I mean, along with all of these things, so you record your bands, you play, you have different things, and I can imagine maybe it's a little bit of a maybe not a release, but kind of just a difference, from other things as far as the dead air pedals. How does how long have these been around? Have you been kind of working on these, and how did this come about? You working on that?
uh, it is different, which is nice. I've been doing it for about 2 years now, I think.
Okay.
It's sort of I built a few pedals over like whatever the past like 20 years from like kits and stuff, but like I sort of gone through phases. Normally it's like I build one, it's cool. I build another, that's cool, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try this thing, and I build it and it doesn't work, and it's just kind of like like fuck this shit, like, and then like 5 to 8 years would pass, and I'd like try another thing, and the process would repeat. But then then early well so I guess before COVID I sort of got back into a little bit. Kurt at God City like did a few like circuit boards and that were of interest to me, and he was nice enough to send me a handful of those, and I built some, and a friend my friend Matt, different than the Matt I mentioned from Birmingham,
Okay.
we built a couple pedals together, like just kind of hanging out. And so I was kind of like getting back in the swing of that and like thinking about things and thinking about, like just things that I wanted to make or was curious about or whatever. And then COVID hit, and I was kind of, I had a little more time on my hands initially. And so I was kind of like, oh, like there's this other like circuit board. I'll like buy this and like try and build this. And like, it was just kind of like a fun uh, hobby that I was kind of like leaning further and further into, I guess, and getting better at. And like, building pedals that way, it's like, it's relatively inexpensive. Like you can buy the circuit
Really?
board for like, yeah, I mean, the circuit board, it depends what it is and who it's from, but it could be anywhere from like $6 to $12. And then you've got the parts are probably, who knows, like, 10 or $20. And, you know,
Huh. Wow.
and then you've got to get the enclosure and whatever. But, all in, you're probably like 30, $40 and, a few hours of time.
Hmm.
And the better you get at it, like when I was like deep into this phase, I'd have like 4 projects planned, and I'd be trying to like group the shipping for like multiple like parts orders and like um, you like, and I was building them faster, but whatever. Still takes some time. Still some that didn't work, but
Okay.
um, but yeah. So I don't know. In like a year or so, that's round. I probably built like 20 to 30 pedals and was kind of
Dang.
like, oh, this is just like fun or interesting or like I don't know. It was just cool, like it's just something different to do, and it's kind of like, you know, it's like one of those things where sometimes doing like a repetitive or not even repetitive, but kind of like a paint by numbers kind of task, it can be kind of pleasant, you know, like to do
Yeah.
for an hour or something. You know, you just put on some music and do this little thing, you know, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Totally.
So I didn't really have any like goals when I like set out to do it, besides just like this seems cool or fun, or like, you know, why not try this? And then I built a couple pedals for a couple of friends of mine, that I was just, you know, like thinking like one of them was interested in like buying some kind of rat or something, and I was like, oh, like I can build you one, you know, like that's cool. And
Dang.
like, so yeah, and then like through this process, I basically had the idea for like one pedal, and like made a like really like rat's nest version of it, like hacking together multiple circuit boards, like sort of like a proof of concept, and was like this is
Okay.
cool, like, you know, like this works how I imagine it. So and that one I had Kurt from God City help me with the circuit board, or he basically did the whole circuit board and gave me some advice and some tips for sort of like how to think about sort of like entering that world, which I knew, you know, I'd been buying like pre-made stuff, but hadn't like ever like designed one, or like had to think about
Oh, okay.
logistics of like spacing, or, you know, like all sorts of other, you know, like dimensional logistics, etc. So he helped me with that, with the first one, and sort of like get it underway. Um, and yeah, it just sort of went from there. Even then, I wasn't sure. Like maybe I'll just do this one pedal, or, you know, like
Mm.
who knows. But you know, I have a way of like having repeated dumb ideas and like being like, I'll try this, you know, or like what, like maybe this could be cool or whatever. So, you know, I kind of
Okay.
just kept following that, and sort of and tried making my own circuit boards, and like
So when did that come into
that's
play as
kind.
far as you? Because that was kind of what I was going to ask as far as you mentioning getting, circuit boards and having different things. But where does
Yeah,
it come into play as far as making your own? And I don't want to sound like a complete dummy because I can figure out, different. But as far as just trying to wrap my mind around making something like that and then having it be like a
yeah, yeah.
completed thing, what goes all into that?
I mean, it's basically using this, like, it's one of those things where, you know, like there's some, like at different jobs that one's had in their life, like there's usually like some outdated program that you have to use, that like you're kind of like, I can't believe anyone still uses this computer program that's like very specific for like this one task, but like, you know, like there are some things that seem like they should be easy to do in it, but they're like, you have to do like like several keystrokes, and it's just like this kind of like weird, like annoying thing that you have to learn. Basically, to make a circuit board, you have to learn a program like that,
Okay. Okay.
which thankfully there's YouTube videos for. So basically, like I committed like 8 hours of like YouTube, like I basically was like one day, it's just like I'm just gonna spend all day trying to like watch a series of tutorials on this and try and like do it. The program's free, so that helps. But so it's, yeah, I was just kind of like, I have this idea for a very simple design. Let's just see if I can like actually do it. And you know, that was pretty much the start. And like I think I made like 3 very simple designs at first, and
Mm.
two of them worked. So that was kind of enough to be like encouraging, of being like, you know, this is physically possible, or
Sweet.
something that's like within like my realm of doing. Um, but yeah, it's mainly just committing to learning the thing, learning the annoying thing,
Mm.
and then you know, like kind of trying to like, the more you do it, the more you learn like, oh, I should or shouldn't do this little thing, or this is like a good idea. To be honest, I think there's probably like a million of those things that I still don't know, but
Okay.
that doesn't seem to have hurt me yet.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that I keep like revising them to try and make them like better for me, the dude who has to like use them. Um,
Right.
there something else. Oh, and the other thing is that like once you're good at that, or not even good at it, but once you can do that, ordering the actual circuit board is pretty cheap. Like I don't actually because I'm new to this side of things, I kind of assume that like 10, certainly 20 years ago or more, that was like harder to do, or people,
Hmm.
were etching their own boards, or, but like now it's very easy to literally order just five of a circuit board for
Oh, dang.
$20 and, like find out if something works. And it's like, so it's kind of like if I have some dumb idea now, it's like it'll take me maybe 3 or 4 hours on the computer to lay it out, depending on how complicated it is, maybe more, maybe less. And then like $20 to see if my dumb idea works. And it's, so kind of like once you're at, that's like a pretty low threshold of entry for, like having some sort of idea.
Yeah.
So,
Dang.
it's kind of like once you're in that world, it at least initially was like a little addictive of being like, oh, the circuit board for like a distortion plus or like a, this boost pedal is like really simple. Like I could just make one of those, and so you do, and whatever.
Jeez, that's insane. And now
Yeah,
these are the Ferro pedals, correct? That are most recently that you're kind of mentioning that you've been putting out.
yeah. I mean, I've got a handful now. That's definitely one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I do a thing where it's like a lot of it's assembled by the place that makes the boards, which makes my like time management easier,
Okay.
basically, which is nice. As I am juggling things, so you basically you basically spend more time upfront laying it out and making sure that it's right, and like sort of like specifying components that they're placing so that like when I have to build a pedal, it's like less time and stress on my end to make it, which is nice.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you have a couple of new, or maybe even it was one, a new pedal that you've been working on here, and you were mentioning as well. Is this now? Is this a completely different design? Is this a newer pedal that you're kind of messing with as far as that you were saying having being shipped over, so you're not having to mess with the board when you get it?
Well, that way is how like I'm doing everything now.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, the new pedals. There's one is like my take on like a big muff kind of circuit, which is something that I'd sort of like debated doing for a while and I had like a couple ideas on, but like I wasn't sure it was enough to like really like make a thing. But I got some more dumb
Sick.
ideas, and so so it seems like it's a thing.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
the other one is like this more weird fuzz and delay combo pedal that's kind of like it's a weirder. It's a little less normal, and but it's very fun, and yeah, there's sort of like this dark web world of people um, fucking around with like some delay chips and kind of like making them misbehave and do weird things. And honestly, I was just kind of like, that seems interesting. So I just kind of like made a circuit board to like literally explore that idea with, and kind of like hacked it up and made like a mess of wires, and
Okay.
kind of like, sort of use that as a springboard for like a new idea. Or it's hard to have a new idea, but to have my take on sort of like what that could be like, I guess, which I think is at least a different end result.
Right. Now, have
um,
you gotten any like rough drafts or early copies or concepts or anything that you have on hand by chance?
yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah, I
Jeez.
wasn't. Yeah, I can go to that world if you want to go to that
Okay.
world.
Yeah.
Now's the
Totally.
time to go to
Yeah.
that world.
That'd be sick.
Cool. I'm gonna move
Okay.
us.
Cool.
All right, so on the left is the Hook Echo, which is a fuzz delay combo that I've been working on. And it's not like a fuzz circuit and a delay circuit. It's like one circuit that provides the fuzz and delay, so they're sort of intertwined always, and it's sort of a balancing act of how fuzzy, how delay, and sort of how crazy and weird you want to be. I'm going to start it off in sort of a more traditional lower gain delay, and then I'm going to try and explore a little higher gain, and then doing some of the weird stuff that it can do, just sort of as an example. So it gets pretty weird, as you can see. This distress sort of works as either like a light pitch modulation, or can turn into total noise depending on how far you push it, how starved the voltage is, what the delay time is like. Basically all these things put different strain on the circuit and get interesting results. But it can be fairly normal, and it can do sort of like a just straightforward fuzz if you want. Like if I turn almost everything down delay wise, but just have the input going up. So it's relatively versatile. The Wound, I think that's going to be the name, but it's not 100% set in stone, is a take on the Russian muff with some added controls. So these are sort of the typical big muff controls up here, and these are some added controls. A mid-contour headroom, which adjusts the clipping and sort of allows it to be a little bit more like a distortion versus a fuzz, and high contour. So these two contours sort of adjust the traditional scoop that people think of with a big muff, and sort of let you dial it into either sort of the low end you want or high end you want, etc.
higher gain version of this. Normal Big Muff has 4 gain stages. This has 5 gain stages. So you've just got basically more.
Oh man, those are so sick, dude. Do you have like an estimated date as far as when you're trying to put those out?
Uh, Not specifically. I mean, I guess the Hook Echo one that I was just playing, I'm probably trying to. I'm moving, by the way. I'm on the move. Uh, I'm probably trying to get that done. I'm back sometime, maybe in January or something like that. But I'm kind of trying
Dang.
to get caught up on other shit
Yeah.
and get that to a comfortable place
Awesome,
to give it a go.
dude.
That one is further along than the Muff thing, which is maybe not named or definitely doesn't have artwork or all sorts of
Okay.
other things like that. So,
I
yeah,
mean, but yeah, and both sound sick. It's cool. I mean, as far as the realms that those things can go, and kind of have something like you mentioned, where it's like I kind of want something like a muff, but I want to have these different little ingredients into it, or I want a little something maybe haggard or a little bit more harsh or less, or so. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
those are sick, man. Those are awesome for sure. Those are
yeah.
sweet. As
I mean, with some of the pedals like the Feral, like things like that, where like I've been using a Rat for years in different projects, and like there are things that I love about like a Rat pedal that like no other pedal can do, but there's also things that I always like wished it could do, and was like, I've tried like dozens of different like clones or versions, like to sort of like find what I want, but like was never able to. So then like, that was kind of the impetus for that, and I wasn't even sure like if I could pull it off. That one had like kind of like the most hours of like me just like trying shit and like beating my head against the wall basically, and being like, like, can I do this? Like, and like most of that's also from like a real lack of, for better or worse, like my understanding of circuits and stuff is not like that in depth. Like I can sort of tell what's going on, but like I'm not like any sort of genius or even that well informed. So it's kind of like, on one hand, I probably have a good chance of stumbling on something that someone who is well informed might not try, and that's probably to my advantage. But at the
yeah,
same time, like I'm probably doing like a bunch of dumb shit to try, and it's just gonna sound like, oh, that, like, why are you gonna spend 2 hours wondering why that doesn't work? Like, so, whatever. It all works out.
I mean, yeah. At the
The
end of the
month
day,
thing
I
is kind
see
of like,
the ferals that go up, and they sell out. So I mean, I know that you've put up some stuff and you're doing something right. So for sure, I mean, it's
thanks.
sick. Sorry, you were mentioning the muff pedal too.
Oh yeah, that one's more kind of like, that's tough because there's a lot of big muffs that I do like, and
Yeah,
like I don't like, but also that's a circuit that like even on its own like had like a million variations over like the years, and it's kind of like I own like 5 or more big muffs, and I think they all sound cool.
yeah,
Like I don't have like a beef with any of them.
yeah.
They all sound different and they're all cool. So it was kind of more like with that, it was kind of more like, is there a spin that I can put on this that I like and is
Right.
different, and I think is like valid, and other people would also like.
Yeah,
Which is kind of different. Like the rat and like the feral was kind of like me trying to like definitely like please like myself on this like decade long quest that I had been on. Uh,
yeah,
and the Muffet version is kind of more just like, can I make something that I think is like a valid contender to like be, the Muffet that someone else has been looking for and that I think is cool
hmm
and isn't just like redundant, like,
yeah.
can I do something original kind of,
Right. Right. Well, and I mean, I guess it's kind of funny too, because like myself being a drummer, so like my brain or like kind of my first instinct goes to that. But like snare drums, I mean, for instance, as far as like how many maple drums do you need? How many steel drums do you need? They all kind of have their own little thing where it's like as musicians, both of us and anybody else who's into it, it's like, man, do I need another big muff? Yeah, for sure.
I know what
it's
you
it's
mean.
gonna
I mean,
add
but
like something different to it, or like for myself, do I need another snare drum? Do I need another such and such? It gives there's that difference to it to where the other may not have, and it's not that you don't like the other one. It's just adding something else into the arsenal for sure.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a rabbit hole you can go down, and one hand, like I'm like envious of the people, like whatever. Some people, and I used to be like this. I would just be looking for like a new distortion or something, and you get something and you try it and you just try and like make that work or whatever. And maybe you don't know if there's something better out there for you or not because you don't want to try like a dozen things or
Yeah.
whatever, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. And also, I mean, ultimately, I think that kind of there's a danger of, becoming hyper obsessed with gear. And, like a lot of people, myself probably included, have this, this issue of kind of like being curious of like what you don't have, what's that thing, like, whatever.
Yeah.
And part of me almost feels like guilty. Like I don't like really want to play into that. I try not to like overly like hype like my own shit because it's like I'm not like whatever. I've always been like a bad salesperson anyways. So, but it's not like I'm trying to like be like, oh, like you've got to have this. Like if you want your sound to go to the next level, this is the one.
Maybe you should make a commercial for it, dude. You just sold it to me.
I guess
I didn't know I needed it, but I need it.
it's going to improve your snare a lot. But,
Oh shit, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, dude, I have to say, I think on that note, like with the pedals and different things, we can wrap there. I don't want to, be taking up your full day here. But this has been incredible, man. I see as well as anybody else that has ever seen your name. You're a very busy man, and I appreciate you taking the time to be able to do this. And I have lots of friends that are into recording and as well as myself. It's all really interesting and it's awesome. And I really appreciate you showing off the pedals as well, dude. This has been incredible. Thank you very much.
yeah, thanks for having me. I thought you were going to ask me like really specific like youth attack related questions or something. I was going to have to like rack my brains for like like detailed notes I'd lost a decade ago. But
well,
instead this has been fun. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, we'll have another time too. It was kind of one of those things where I really wanted to dig on some of that stuff, and I wanted to, like talk Absolute Power and some of the, some of the different bands that you had over time. And I'm like, well, I'll make this more of a comfortable thing. And you have some incredible work that you've done. So it's hard in an hour to try and touch any of those things, but we'll figure something out at another point, and maybe do some of that. I'll dig into some of your notes, my man.
Cool. Well, that's cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. Anybody watching too, this will be edited and I'll have it on YouTube here probably within like the next month. And I'll promote it on here and everything too and tag you. So thank you again, man. This has been incredible.
Thanks for having me.
All right. See you, man. Take care.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi, a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.